we go. Sound on? There we go. Most of you know that prior to coming to St. Anthony's, I was serving as a hospital chaplain in downtown Seattle. Chaplains can be clergy or lay from all kinds of cultural backgrounds, but if there's one universal truth about hospital chaplains, it's that we're not very good dinner guests. Not because we can't be delightful company, but because once the dinner table conversation shifts to work stories, hospital chaplain work stories are always weird. Some can be inspiring, some can be downright depressing. And over our years together, I'm sure I'll tell you many of those stories, both the inspiring ones and the sadder ones and everything in between. Throughout my ministry in the hospital, there was one question that I heard more than any other. I heard it from patients of all kinds of different denominations and religions, from people of all kinds of different cultures. I heard this question asked in many different languages. And in one of my last ICU visits, a patient's daughter threw herself into my arms and cried this question into my shoulder. She said it in Spanish, ¿Dónde está mi Jesús? I don't know much Spanish, but I understood that one. Where is my Jesus? In times of great suffering in our own lives, or the life of the world, the whole human family, many of us find ourselves asking this question: where is God? Where is God in the midst of tragedy or war, illness or grief? Maybe like me, you found yourself asking this question as the horrible stories of violence and suffering continue to pour out of the Holy Land among both the Palestinian and Israeli peoples. My prayer for the people in war-torn nations is the same as my prayer for patients and families in the hospital. God be with them. God be close to them. God, let them feel your presence. In today's first reading from Exodus, Moses is speaking with God after last week, convincing God not to destroy the Israelites despite the golden calf incident. After all, Moses says, you promised our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that you would bring us to the promised land. God agrees, but God proposes sending an angel instead. An angel of the Lord will walk with you as you continue on your journey. Moses was not satisfied with that. Moses told God, if your presence will not go, then don't carry us away from here. Moses' prayer is the same as the one we know so well. God, stay close to us. Be with us. Again, God agrees, saying to Moses, I'll do the very thing you have asked, for you have found favor in my sight, and I know you by name. And to us, maybe those words from God give us a warm sense of reassurance. God knows us by name, just as God knew Moses. This is the same God who performed breathtaking, terrifying, indescribable miracles in front of Moses, shocking acts that must have made Moses feel about this big in the face of so much power. And still, Moses asks, show me your glory, I pray. And I am truly amazed that Moses, who has seen so many shocking displays of God's power, requested something like this. Moses has seen God part the Red Sea, send water from a rock, speak from a burning bush, and so much more. And still, Moses asks, show me your glory, God. The Hebrew word Moses uses for glory is kabod, which literally means weight, and used figuratively here, it's positive. It's similar to splendor or copiousness, abundance. Moses wants to see the immense, physical, splendid presence of God. Again, God agrees with Moses. I will make all my goodness pass before you, and I will proclaim my name, Yahweh, and I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and I will show mercy on whom I will show mercy. And I love this. I love that in the immense weight of God's glory it's wrapped up in mercy and kindness. Of all the things God could have done to answer this question, show me your glory, God said, my glory is in mercy, in kindness. Other translations render this sentence differently. The NIV says, I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy. I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion. The Names of God translation says, I will be kind to anyone I want. I will be merciful to anyone I want. The Common English Bible says, I will be kind to whomever I wish to be kind. And I will have compassion to whomever I wish to be compassionate. Over and over, through so many translations, we hear God remind us that God's justice is bigger than our own, that God's glory is wrapped up in goodness and kindness and mercy. God will be kind to anyone, show mercy to anyone. It's one of the things that makes God God. We do not decide who is worthy of that mercy, who is worthy of compassion. Only God does. That, God tells Moses, is a core part of God's identity, the weight of God's splendor and glory. Anyone can have this love. That's what makes God God. That massive power and reckless love go hand in hand. Like many of you, I have felt overwhelmed with sorrow and feelings of helplessness as images and stories of terrible suffering from the Holy Land continue to come to us. The conflict there is so complex and so ancient. It's hard to understand and impossible to know what one person, could possibly have to add to a conversation that's been going on for decades, even centuries. What I do know, without a doubt, is that God weeps alongside every grieving family. What I do know is that God is holding the hand of every person in danger, that God stays close to them the way God stayed close to Moses. God is right there with them. It may be the only thing I know for sure. I know also that God's glory is best shown in kindness and mercy. So I implore you, pray for the people of the Holy Land, both Israeli and Palestinian, in the same way we have been praying for the people of Ukraine and Russia and the people of all war-torn nations. We should resist labeling entire populations as good or evil based on the actions of their governments or terrorist organizations. It wasn't long ago that I was in the Holy Land in January of 2020. It's hard to believe now. But when we were there, we visited sites in both Israel and Palestine. We saw many holy places, many holy churches, many holy sites. But the holiest, most moving night of the whole trip was when we heard from the Parents' Circle. The Parents' Circle is a joint Israeli-Palestinian organization that brings together families from both sides, all of whom have lost loved ones to this conflict. And that night, we heard a Palestinian Muslim woman and an Israeli Jewish man speak together. They told the story of how both their sons had died in the violence, and how when they met each other through the work of the Parents' Circle, they felt frightened. There was resentment, there was anger, there was grief. But they realized they shared that grief, that terrible loss of losing a child. Brought them together. They had more in common, they realized, than they had different. Both parents were able to listen to each other, to cry, to hold each other. And that's where God is in that conflict. I visited many holy sites, and not a single one was more holy. That's where God is. God's glory is in kindness and mercy, goodness and compassion. At the hospital in the neurocritical care unit, when that weeping woman threw herself into my arms and cried out, "Donde está Jesús?" I hugged her back, tightly as I could, and said, right here with you. God's with us now, the same way God walked with Moses. God is with all people suffering from danger or grief or hunger or fear. God's glory is in goodness and mercy, love for all people, a love that surpasses all human understanding. And dear children of God, this is good news. Amen.